Tonight I want to start with a confession, and if you allow it, a challenge. The confession is this: the worst things that never happened to you saved your life. The challenge is to let that sink in, not as a bumper sticker idea, but as a living memory in your body. Think of a door you wanted to walk through that mysteriously jammed. Think of a person who dazzled you and then suddenly disappeared. Think of a journey you planned that fell apart in the final hour. What if those were not random malfunctions of fate, but the way a wiser pattern, call it providence, call it the self, call it a higher power, folded its wings around you? There's a line Jung lived by: the psyche is shaped by what it attends to and what it avoids. In other words, protection doesn't always feel like protection. Sometimes it feels like loss, delay, detour, or impossibility. Stay with me, because by the end of this conversation, you'll recognize the texture of being protected, even when the packaging looks like chaos. If that resonates already, pause your own inner commentary for just a moment and breathe with me. You're not late, you're being escorted. Welcome to Deep Psyche Lab. If you're new here, this is the corner of the internet where we translate depth psychology into human language, where everyday life is treated as symbol-rich and meaningful, not just accidental. We read the weather of the soul. We listen for the whisper behind the noise. If that sounds like home, subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab and tap the bell so these episodes find you when you need them most. And if you've been around for a while, I'm glad you're back. Tonight, we're going to name 4 signs you're being protected by a higher power. 4 fingerprints that show up when something greater is quietly on your side. As we go, I'll weave in Jung's terms, but always in plain English. We'll talk about synchronicity, which simply means a meaningful coincidence that carries personal significance. We'll talk about the self, Jung's word for the center of the psyche that knows more than the ego knows. We'll talk about numinosity, the feeling of a presence that is larger than you, a sacred charge in the air. But the point isn't jargon. The point is your life. If the topic resonates, like this video so the algorithm knows to carry it to others who need it. And because words become anchors, drop the phrase "I am protected" in the comments as a note to your future self when a storm rolls in. Let's set a tone. Depth psychology isn't a religion, but it has a reverence for mystery. It looks at your dreams, slips, accidents, and coincidences as potential messages from the unconscious, like letters shoved under a door. Many people imagine protection as a force field. Nothing difficult gets through. In practice, protection is more surgical. It removes what would deform you and leaves the difficulty that will strengthen you. And because we're meaning-making creatures, the mind sometimes wants to label every obstacle as a test or every success as a sign. The task is subtler. The task is to track pattern, not every pebble, to sense the difference in feel between random friction and guided redirection. Tonight I'll describe that feeling in the body, the inner markers that say, you are not alone, you are being steered. Keep your hands on the wheel, but trust the road. When people talk about being protected, they often start with what did not happen. The car that didn't start on the morning the highway was later blocked by a major crash. The sudden illness that canceled a trip that would have entangled you financially or relationally in a way you couldn't see. The breakup that forced a relocation that opened a career you didn't even know existed. Jung would call these boundary events, edges between your conscious plan and the larger map. In the moment, they look like spills. Later, when you turn the paper upright, they reveal they were brushstrokes of a painting you didn't know you were making. But how do you recognize this as it's happening, and not only as a tidy story afterward? That's what the 4 signs are for. A kind of inner compass checklist that helps you sense you're being shielded, even as the ego is busy writing complaint emails to the universe. The first sign is the way benign interruptions clump around the wrong path. I call them merciful malfunctions. They're small, almost laughable interferences that appear whenever you try to go left, and they vanish when you try to go right. You plan a meeting with someone who looks perfect on paper, and every scheduling attempt glitches. Location change, time zone confusion, rescheduling 3 times, a sudden tech failure exactly at the minute you try to join. You reload, it works for every other call, but not this one. Your mind says, push through. Your body says, not this. And here's the psychological angle. The ego, your conscious sense of I, believes persistence is virtue in every direction. But the self, your deeper organizing center, likes to use frictions as signals. Not every friction is a sign to stop. Many are training. Yet merciful malfunctions have a strange feel. They arrive gently but repeatedly, without the sharpness of attack. They're not catastrophic, they're faintly comedic. You keep dropping the keys exactly when you're trying to leave to meet that person. You spill water on the shirt you need for that particular event. The street you chose is under unexpected construction only on the day you plan to go. There is a principle here. Protection often whispers through low-stakes annoyances rather than shouting through disasters. It prefers to nudge you into safety before the cliff, not at the edge. The ego's counter-strategy is rationalization. I'm just unlucky. It's a coincidence. I'm being tested to see if I really want this. Sometimes that's true, but if you pay attention, you'll notice repeated pattern. When something is off for you, the universe often builds a soft maze around it. You can still force your way through. Freedom is real, but the cost is high. You'll feel drained in ways that aren't proportional. Your sleep stiffens. Your humor goes missing. You begin resenting small acts that used to be easy. That's the texture of being in the wrong corridor, and protection is trying to turn you. In Jung's vocabulary, we could say your attitude, and here attitude simply means your psychological orientation, is out of alignment with the living process within. The self whispers through blocked doors and stuck zippers, "Friend, not this." The simplest practice here is to run a 2-day experiment whenever merciful malfunctions clump. Suspend pursuit even if it seems irrational. Pivot to an adjacent possibility. See whether doors suddenly unjam. Protection is pragmatic. If you're being kept from harm, an alternative will frequently carry ease. Ease doesn't mean no effort. It means that effort produces fruit. Let me describe how this sounds in the nervous system. If you're forcing a route you shouldn't take, your body gets more vigilant, even when there's no visible threat. You arrive at the destination and you're already exhausted from battling wind that wasn't weather. It was warning. By contrast, when the interruption is protective and you listen, there's a tender afterglow. You feel oddly lighter, like you just stepped out of a crowded room into fresh air. Even your inner critic softens. It's as if the psyche rewards obedience to reality with a small gift of peace. That peace is not laziness, it's orientation. It's what happens when you stop rowing against the river's current and let the boat face downstream. If that image makes sense, put "I am protected" in the comments as a way to mark that you know the difference between resistance that builds you and resistance that bleeds you. And if this episode is helpful so far, give it a like so more people find it. The second sign is perhaps the most famous, meaningful coincidence that arrives with a feeling, not just a fact. Jung called it synchronicity. Imagine you've been quietly considering a move to a new city. You haven't told anyone. That week, 3 unrelated people at different times mention that city, unprompted, in warm ways. A client on a call says, "I just got back from there. Strangely, it felt like home." An old friend texts a photo from a coffee shop with the street name showing. Your exact block of interest. A podcast host you love ends his episode with a line from a poet who lived on the very street you circled in your research. That would be odd enough. But what gives it weight is not only the coincidence, it's the inner sensation that accompanies it. The sense that you have been seen by something. Jung would say the inner and outer worlds have aligned, time has briefly bent to let the meaning shine through. It's not magic in a childish sense. It's a pattern recognition moment where you're unconscious and the world's rhythms rhyme. The protecting force often uses this to steer you towards safe haven you didn't know you could trust or steer you away from a shiny trap. There's a practical piece here. Many people chase coincidences like fireworks and ignore the felt sense. Protection doesn't care how spectacular the coincidence appears. It cares about whether the coincidence arrests your attention with that quiet gravity that says, "Listen." The nervous system recognizes it. Your breathing lengthens. You're alert but not anxious. And for a little while, your preferences go quiet and you can just perceive. I call this the hush. You felt it when you walked into a space and instantly knew, I could heal here, or I could be harmed here, even before logic caught up. Synchronicity becomes protective when the hush appears. Without the hush, coincidence is entertainment, a smart pattern machine showing you what your mind can do. With the hush, it's guidance. It says, go now or not yet, or choose the other door. It rarely gives you a full map, but it often gives you the next true step. Let me be precise. You don't need a cluster of coincidences to be protected. One can be enough if the hush is strong. And equally, 5 coincidences in a row without the hush may be your mind's confirmation bias hunting for certainty. Protection is subtle. It wants you awake, not superstitious. One reason it uses meaningful coincidence is to bypass the ego's favorite argument. If this isn't linear and rational, it's invalid. But life is not a spreadsheet. Even the most rational scientist senses the difference between noise and signal. In your life, the signal often announces itself with this charged ordinariness. Everything looks normal, but the air is brighter somehow. A bird lands exactly on the line of the poem you are underlining. A child says the one sentence that unties an adult problem. If you've had a moment like that, you know what I mean. And if you haven't, the simplest way to begin is to keep a 3-line record each day of one outer event and one inner feeling that seemed strangely paired. You're training your attention to notice the seam. Often, this noticing is itself a protection, because what we notice sooner, we suffer less. The third sign arrives from the other side of your skin, a quiet inner authority that's distinct from fear and different from desire. We can call it conscience if you like, but I mean something slightly wider. Jung called it the voice of the self, your deepest organizing center that holds your wholeness in mind. When protection is present, that inner voice does not argue. It informs. It doesn't shout, it names. It will say things like, "You can do this, but you don't need to." And you'll find a surprising lack of urgency in you afterward. It will say, "If you go, go alone," and you'll suddenly be at peace with disappointing someone who wanted to come along. By contrast, when your fear speaks, your chest tightens, your vocabulary shrinks, and everything feels now or never. When your desire speaks without the self, you get dizzy with imagined futures, and you start bargaining with reality. The protective voice leaves you lucid. That lucidity is often accompanied by a small sadness, as though you're saying goodbye to a fantasy, and a small relief, as though sanity just walked back into the room. Here's where it gets interesting psychologically. Many of us confuse protection with parentification. We want a cosmic parent to take away the burden of choosing. Protection doesn't do that. It gives you clarity so that you can choose with dignity. It doesn't remove moral complexity. It orders it. It doesn't cancel grief. It gives grief a place to sit while you act. The inner voice that protects is not sentimental. It tells the truth at a temperature you can bear. For example, when you ask, "Should I stay with this person?" it may not say yes or no. It may say, "If you stay, your tenderness will dim, and if you leave, your fear of loneliness will spike, but your tenderness will stay bright." That is a protective voice because it respects your agency. It gives you consequences and invites you to choose who you become. When people say, "Something told me," that's often what they mean. A voice that did not flatter or frighten me, but named the landscape so clearly I couldn't. Pretend not to know. You can cultivate your capacity to hear this voice by creating small covenants with yourself and keeping them. Protection does not only happen from above. It happens from within when you become someone you can trust. If you say, "For 7 days I won't check my phone in bed," and you keep it, you're not just improving sleep. You're sharpening the instrument that can hear guidance. Your attention becomes less ragged, the well gets clearer. And when a real crossroads comes, you will not confuse a panic impulse with a protective signal. One concrete practice is to sit quietly after a decision is made, not before, and listen for the echo. If the decision is aligned, your body feels a settling, even if the choice is hard. If it's misaligned, there's a vague agitation, like a door clicking but not latching. The psyche is trying to tell you, close it properly or leave it open. Half-closed doors are how we invite drafts of trouble. The fourth sign is the one nobody wants at first, subtraction that turns out to be shelter. In stories, protection looks like a sword appearing in your hand or a guardian stepping between you and danger. In life, protection often looks like loss, the invitation that never arrives, the funding that falls through, the person you wanted to impress who seems curiously unimpressed, the apartment you put your whole heart on that went to someone else. Subtraction hurts because it touches our attachment to a particular picture of how our life should look. But subtractive protection is often the most merciful variety because it places you in the empty space where the right elements can find you. Jung described individuation, the process of becoming who you are, as a series of differentiations. You separate what is genuinely yours from what is borrowed, imposed, or copied. Protection participates in individuation by removing what would cause you to forget yourself. It's important to dignify the grief in subtraction. Protection is not denial. If something is taken, you get to mourn. The key is to notice whether life is collapsing around you or clearing around you. Collapsing feels like doors slamming with a sense of punishment. Clearing feels like doors closing with a sense of finality, followed by more accurate openings. Protection likes to clear the noise so the signal can reach you. It removes a job that was about to consume your weekends with busy work so that an unlikely apprenticeship can land. It removes an audience that loved a performative version of you so that a smaller audience who loves your real voice can gather. It removes a friend who always needed you to stay small so that your bigness doesn't have to apologize for existing. When you retell the story from the other side, you often catch yourself saying, "If X hadn't left, Y could never have arrived." That sentence is protection in past tense. Our task is to catch it sooner in present tense, without skipping the ritual of grief, and to say, "Because X is leaving, I am being prepared to receive Y." At this point, you might be thinking, but what about self-sabotage? What about the mistakes I actively made? Where is protection when I'm the one breaking my own heart? Jung would answer with kindness. The psyche wastes nothing. Even our misguided attempts to get love or power become raw material for wholeness when we are willing to look with clear eyes. Protection doesn't always stop you beforehand. Sometimes it lays down a net beneath you so that the fall breaks you open rather than breaking you apart. If you've ever done something you regret and then witnessed how the consequences became a tutor, how the shame you thought would ruin you became the humility that saved you, you've met this kind of protection. It's not a hall pass for harm. It's the mystery that grace uses our ruins as building blocks. I want to offer a picture to hold. Imagine your life as a river with a current. The ego is the rower, strong, opinionated, willful. The self is the riverbed, shaping the flow quietly, determining the banks, holding the direction you can't see from the surface. Protection is often the stones under the water that redirect you just enough to keep you from the snarl of branches around the bend. Sometimes your boat scrapes those stones and you get angry. Sometimes you bruise your hand pushing off. Later you realize that bruise kept you from capsizing. If you develop respect for the stones, you learn to read the water better. You stop resenting every scrape. You ask different questions. Not, "Why is the universe against me?" but, "What is this trying to keep me from, and what is it trying to steer me toward?" Most of us were taught to look for protection outside and to ignore the signatures inside. So let's name those signatures clearly, with the softness they deserve. When protection is near, there is a particular flavor of time. It elongates. Even in an emergency, some part of you is in slow motion and sees the necessary move. Athletes talk about the game slowing down. Survivors describe an eerie clarity. Therapists witness clients spontaneously say the one sentence that releases them from a decade of confusion. This elongation is not detachment, it's presence. Life widens for a moment and you can see. If you've known it, you know it. If you haven't, practice is simple and humble. Each day for 60 seconds, stop and look at one ordinary object until your mind quiets. Your mug, a leaf, your own hands. Return to the sensation of seeing. What protects us most is our capacity to be here. The more here you are, the sooner you sense when something doesn't belong. Another signature is the reconciliation of opposites inside you. Protection comes with twin gifts, courage and restraint. Courage without restraint is recklessness. Restraint without courage is stagnation. When you're being protected, you will notice that you are brave about the right things and patient about the right things. You will say yes where you used to equivocate. You will say no without an essay of apology. The psyche loves balance that is alive, not symmetrical. If you find yourself suddenly able to hold tension without collapsing into decision panic, that's protection providing a container. Jung called this holding the tension of the opposites, the willingness to let competing truths sit next to each other until a third way emerges. Protection often buys you the time for that third way. Let's talk about people for a moment, because many of our protections arrive wearing human faces. There are mentors who appear for a season and vanish when their work is done. There are friends whose sole assignment was to walk you across one bridge in your life and then step back. There are even adversaries who, by forcing you to set a boundary, protect you from your own tendencies to overgive or to confuse being needed with being loved. Depth psychology teaches that every figure in our life also lives inside us as an image. When the outer protector leaves, the inner one stays. If you pay attention, you'll hear yourself say something they once said at exactly the moment you need it. That's protection internalized. This is one way individuation shows up. The traits you admired or resisted in others become available to you to deploy with wisdom. Tonight, consider who played that role for you this year. You can even write them a letter that you never send to acknowledge the protection they carried on your behalf. Now, a delicate subject: faith and fate. Some of you call the protecting intelligence God. Some call it the self. Some call it luck shaped by preparation. I won't argue the labels. What matters is the disciplined tenderness of your attention. The more you attend, the more you notice how the line between inner and outer is not as firm as it seems. You feel a nudge to take a different street. You do. You meet the one person who introduces you to the work you were born to do. Did your thought cause the event? Did the event answer the thought? Depth psychology is less concerned with causal chains than with meaningful pattern. When repeated patterns arrive with the hush, when benign interruptions clump around certain roots, when an inner voice names the landscape clearly, and when subtraction clears a space that is later filled with what fits. Those are the signatures of protection. You don't need to declare a cosmology to work with them. You need to practice noticing. Let me speak directly to the skeptic in you, because healthy skepticism is a protection too. You might say, isn't this all just hindsight bias? Aren't we just storytelling animals making sense of chance? Yes, we are storytellers. Yes, the mind is good at retrofitting narratives. And also, there is a difference between a story that anesthetizes and a story that mobilizes. If your interpretation of events makes you passive, resentful, or grandiose, the universe is against me, or the universe is my concierge, you're not being protected. You're being placated. Protective meaning-making does something else entirely. It invites agency, humility, and gratitude. It makes you more careful, not more paranoid, more open, not more gullible. It teaches you to move through the world with your eyes soft and your spine straight. Now, that posture is not mystical, it's skillful. There's another angle we rarely discuss: protection from unearned success. It's controversial to say, but being given what you want before your character can carry it is not a blessing. It is a setup. The psyche knows this. So sometimes protection delays what you're fully capable of to give you time to build the vessel that can hold it without cracking. Think of a musician who gets famous overnight and loses the privacy they needed to keep their art alive. Think of a promotion that would have trapped you in a performative identity from which it's very expensive to return. Protection often shows up as smaller rooms, so you can practice the truth of yourself without the glare. If you're in a small room right now, don't mistake it for punishment. Ask, what instrument is being tuned in me? When the larger room arrives, you'll be able to play in tune instead of in panic. And if you're already in the large room, protection may be asking you to construct small rooms inside it. Routines, relationships, rituals that keep you shepherded. I want to offer you a short imaginal exercise. Let your mind bring forward one situation right now where you feel blocked. Name it. Notice where the block lives in your body. Is it a tightness in your throat? A brick under your ribs? A sharpness in your jaw? Now ask gently, without accusation, if this block were a guardrail, what cliff is it keeping me from? Don't force an answer. Just allow an image to rise. Maybe you see yourself running until you collapse. Maybe you see a version of you saying yes to everyone and vanishing. Maybe you see a beautiful house built on sand. If the image comes, trust it. Now ask the second question. If this block is a redirection, where might the open gate be? You may see a person's face you've been avoiding texting. You may see a bookshelf with a book that's been waiting. You may see a quiet morning and a pen. The ego likes dramatic solutions. Protection often favors humble next steps. Take the next humble step, then watch what happens to the friction. If it loosens, you're likely listening well. If it tightens, you're likely avoiding another truth. Either way, you are at the wheel and the riverbed is holding. Another mark of protection is the way memory is curated. The psyche does not store everything equally. It highlights certain scenes so vividly you can smell the air if you recall them. Often these are moments of danger or beauty. But sometimes they are moments of choice you barely recognized at the time. You remember the phone call on a Tuesday afternoon when you said, "Actually, no," and your voice surprised you with how calm it was. You remember the night you went home early and missed the drama that exploded after midnight. You remember the job offer email and the way your stomach turned, not from fear but from knowledge that this glitter was fool's gold. Those highlighted memories are part of your inner archive of protection. Revisit them. Let them tutor you again. They build a pattern library in your bones. Then, when a similar pattern arises, you'll know the feel of safety and the scent of danger before a single fact has been confirmed. Let's name another nuance. Sometimes the protection is for someone else, and you are the carrier. You are the interruption that saves a friend from a poor decision simply by needing their help at the exact hour they would have gone somewhere harmful. You are the meaningful coincidence in someone's day without knowing it. Your text lands at the hinge of their despair. You are the voice of inner authority to a child when you calmly tell the truth about consequences. When you see yourself as a potential bearer of protection, you move differently. You become more careful with your availability because you realize your presence is not casual. You become more honest because you realize false comfort can endanger someone more than a gentle truth. You become more tender because you realize the day you ruin with your irritability might have been the day someone needed your steadiness as their protection. This is not pressure, it is dignity. We are for each other walking talismans when we choose to be. Some of you are listening from within a storm. You might say, "It's lovely to talk about protection, but I'm in the middle of something that doesn't feel guided at all." I want to meet you there. Not every harm is prevented. Not every injury is instruction. Some things happen that are simply unjust or senseless. Depth psychology does not paper over this. It asks, how do we metabolize experience so that it doesn't freeze us? Protection, then, has a second mode. The capacity to find meaning after impact, to prevent secondary harm, cynicism, isolation, self-erasure from taking root. If you're here, protection may look like the simple decision to keep your heart clean while your circumstances are messy. It may look like refusing to make permanent vows about yourself based on temporary pain. It may look like allowing help from people you usually prefer to impress. There is a fierce kind of protection that sounds like a sentence you whisper into your pillow. This will not make me cruel. That vow protects everyone you will ever love. If the pace of this conversation is serving you, remember to like the video. It tells the platform that nuanced content matters. And if you're just discovering us, subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab and turn on notifications. That small action is the way this community grows. Also, your comment becomes a signal to others who scroll through in their own dark night. The phrase tonight is simple and strong. I am protected. When you write it, imagine signing your name under it in ink. Future, you will thank you. Let's gather our threads back into the 4 primary signs. The way benign interruptions clump around the wrong path, the way meaningful coincidences arrive with the hush and tilt your day, the way a quiet inner authority speaks with clarity without panic, and the way subtraction clears the ground for what fits. These 4 are not techniques. They are textures. Your job is not to manufacture them, but to notice them when they appear. The noticing itself is a form of consent. In Jung's language, when the ego consents to the self, the personality stops fracturing itself to survive. It moves toward wholeness. Wholeness is not a fixed state. It's a way of traveling. Protected travelers take responsibility without obsession. They hope without naivety. They grieve without forfeiting gratitude. Protection doesn't make life easy. It makes life oriented. Before we close, I want to offer a tiny ritual you can use this week. In the morning, ask one question, and in the evening, answer it. The question is, where might I be gently rerouted today? In the evening, write 3 sentences, 1 interruption you experienced, 1 coincidence you noticed, and 1 sentence from your inner voice that felt different than fear or desire. Do this for 7 days. Patterns will emerge. At the end of the week, circle the phrases that repeat. Those are your personal signatures of protection. Keep the page somewhere you can see it. The psyche loves visible promises. There's one more thing. Protection is inseparable from purpose, not in the grandiose sense where you must save the world by Tuesday, but in the quiet sense where your life is a conduit for meaning and care. When your life is aimed, protection has context. It knows what to shield because it knows where you're going. If you're unsure of your aim, simplify it. Become someone whose presence increases clarity and reduces harm. If you do that, many doors will move out of your way and many dangers will reveal themselves sooner. The world is hungry for adults, people who can self-regulate, tell the truth, and keep commitments. The more of an adult you become, the more protection feels like partnership. You won't wait around for miracles you're avoiding making room for. You will do your part with an unironic seriousness that still holds humor. You'll ask for guidance without abdicating responsibility. That balance is rare. It's also profoundly protective. If you're still here, I want you to hear this directly. You are not a cosmic accident. The pattern of your life, with all its bruises and beauties, has been tended by hands you can feel even when you can't see them. The proof is your survival. The proof is your capacity to recognize what I'm naming. The proof is the way a particular sentence in this episode just felt like it belonged to you. Keep that sentence. Write it down. It's a small lantern. Carry it. We're nearing the end, so let's make this practical one more time. Tomorrow, when a minor frustration happens, the coffee spills or the train is late, before you let your mind sprint to frustration, pause and ask 2 curiosity questions. What might this be preventing? And what else just opened? It doesn't mean every spill is sacred. It means you're choosing to meet life with attentive dignity. That posture is contagiously sane. It protects you from ruminating yourself into exhaustion. It protects your relationships from your stress misfiring into blame. And it protects your future from being colonized by your old habits. The higher power's favorite instrument is often your smallest decision. Make it well. If you'd like to go deeper with this kind of work, this channel is here to be your companion. We make episodes that respect your intelligence and your hunger for meaning. If you haven't already, subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab and ring the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Like this video if it was useful to you. It helps us reach the people quietly looking for this exact conversation. And because community creates accountability, leave a comment with the words, "I am protected." And if you want to be more specific, add the smallest way you notice protection this week. Your example will prime someone else to notice theirs. One gentle line before we close. This channel is educational and not a substitute for therapy. If you are facing acute distress or patterns that feel unmanageable, a trained therapist can provide care and containment beyond what a video can offer. To recap in one breath, you can carry in your pocket. Protection is often a soft hand, not a loud rescue. The clumped interruptions that steer you away from trouble. The coincidences with a hush that point you toward what fits. The steady inner voice that names the landscape without panic. And the subtractions that clear the ground so your real life can grow. If you remember nothing else, remember this line. Not everything that blocks you is against you. Some doors close to keep your soul intact. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the way you're learning to listen. Like the video if it served you, subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab. Turn on notifications so these episodes arrive on time in your life, and add your "I am protected" to the comments so we build a chorus of witnesses. Until next time, keep your eyes soft and your spine straight. You are being escorted.